First, let it be said that I'm here under false pretenses. I didn't know this was fiction, because I swear to God, all this is true. Everything I tell you is true. But here's how it happened. Mama told me not to leave. Papa told me not to touch that door. Mama told me not to leave. Papa told me not to touch that door. I said, why you want to ramble, boy? I said, I just can't stay put no more. Cause I just love me some highway. I gotta go. Whiskey heads take their woes to the bottom. Church folks take the Lord their load. Whiskey heads take their woes to the bottles. Church folks take their Lord their load. Me, I just want to be over yonder hill, just further on up the road. Cause I just love me some highway. I gotta go. And that's what's happened, actually. Dawn was breaking when I stole away. Left a note when I slipped away. I said, don't worry, y'all. I'll be okay. Cause I just love me some highway. And that took me right to the Akashic books. And there we go.
See, I told you we were doing something right. And we did recently publish Melvin's book, Confessions of an Ex-Doofus Itchy-Footed Mother, which is a graphic novel version of his most recent film. And all of our authors, we have all their books on sale downstairs. And so please support us, support our authors, and also support the Center for Fiction by purchasing some books. First up tonight will be special guest Joseph Matson, who is in town from Los Angeles. He is not on the Akashic list yet, but he is part of our extended family, and he's been a saint to us, and he's been really great to work with, and it's a pleasure to have him here. He's the author of Eat Hell and Empty the Sun, a novel with soundtrack by 6 organs of admittance, and has published both fiction and nonfiction in numerous journals and magazines. An epical rambler, miles under him include work as a farmer, dishwasher, getaway driver, and in healthcare for the clinically mentally insane. His home base is LA. Author Jerry Stahl has said, Joseph Matson writes like a guitar player with 19 fingers, everywhere at once, stinging, dark, and beautiful. Please join me in welcoming Joseph Matson.
Thank you very much to each and all present. And this is an incredible honor, and I'll stand in desperation of a hard act to follow and make do. Here we go. I'm going to read from my novel, Empty the Sun. And I'm not going to explain it, I'm just going to read the opening bit, and if you like it, buy it. Here I was, doing 90 on the Santa Monica freeway with a quart of whiskey shoved into my crotch and my dead neighbor in the trunk. It had come time to leave Los Angeles. I'd had a dream the night before, the dream. God told me to shove a sawed-off slug barrel shotgun into my mouth and pull the trigger. Why not? For the world was going to end in a week on July 4th. I'd gone to tell Hal, my neighbor, about it. He had a critical obsession with both guns and the Lord. When I found him slunk into his favorite chair like wet clothing stripped after a heavy rain, already stinking of mold and turning blue. He had a pen clutched in his right hand and a piece of paper lying at his feet with the salutation, Dear Mag, shakily scrawled across the top. Jamming into the iron face of heavy fog sailing inland from the ocean, I couldn't see 15 feet in front of me, but I could still see Los Angeles in the rearview mirror. I thought, soon this fog will cloak you, you poor city plagued with hunger, you poor insatiable Our Lady, the Queen of the Angels, and I'll be gone. You took him, and though I'm not surprised, I still cannot believe it. Hal wasn't just a neighbor, he was a friend. He'd paid his dues. Belief has always been for noble fools. I conceded. I uncorked the whiskey and shoved the barrel of that into my face. It was June 28th, I had 6 days. I went west, as I always seem to do when leaving a place behind. The problem was that one can only go west for 20 miles from downtown Los Angeles to the continent's end, and no boat awaited me there. I didn't have a plan. I just knew it was time to go. I couldn't bear to let Hal rot away into anonymous oblivion in the Amigo, the Ramshackle Hotel we lived in, which decades before had been a toy factory warehouse. If dreams were once born in the belly of that old building's former incarnation, then they sure as hell went back there now to die. No, too many unsigned bodies had been hauled out of that place already. Disaffected former wives surrendered to alcohol, abused and saintly prostitutes, zombie junkies with no discipline, general head cases fried too long under the unforgiving Southern California sun, vets, the discomfited, scarred, and obese, unknown blues legends, and a score of forsaken others. The Amigo was first rate for the crestfallen. Refuge is not a pretty thing. Hal and I ended up there for a similar core reason, dressed up in different circumstances. We were each wholly alone in the world after losing something we couldn't afford to lose, which opened a hole so deep in our lives that absolutely nothing could possibly fill it. Hal had spoken to me about Maggie just once by name, but every single part of his existence was inspired by and reeked of her. Real love is the one thing that might give credence to the existence of any of our gods, he'd say, treading the thinnest line between cold, brutal torment and hot, ecstatic joy. Beyond any cruel or beautiful thing of nature. Hal had lost his many years ago on a crusty old farm in southwestern Michigan in an incident he contended that betrayed and spilled the warmest of blood. Hal was the first person I ever met who had killed somebody. Forget the universe, fuck the stars, and to hell with the ocean and the miracle of conception. Screw the mountains too. They all have nothing to do with God, boy. You understand. He was in his 60s and looked not a day younger than 80, yet somehow remained strong, weathered to what I once believed was the point of indestructibility, resigned with boundless sorrow, sure, but unable to die. Until yesterday. Presently, literally a lifetime ago. I laid the thumb and 3 fingers of my left hand on the steering wheel as if studying a splayed taxidermied game bird nailed to the board. The index finger was missing. The absence of it glowed in the dim warmth of the dashboard light like an old ghost, dead but soulful, a distant echo of the living. I found the whiskey again and plugged it hard, wiping my mouth with the back of my good hand, missing trickles of wet gold tributaries running through my 3-year beard. I reached down between my legs for the mouth of the bottle. Into it, I rubbed the fingerless nub of my left hand, brought it to my lips, sucked down to the knuckle, and asked aloud, "Finger, are you waiting for me in heaven?" What I got was the sound of the air screaming through the slight crack of the window. All I ever wanted to do in the world was play the guitar, which was execrably ruined when I'd lost the most crucial digit used in my craft, just before Hal came into my life and I moved in next door to him. If by chance God was only choking my leash about Armageddon, I'd merely turn a bruised, ripened, Christological 33 years old in a few months. But I somehow felt older and younger, dead and alive in the same breath. Who was I to say what it's like to feel the thus far untread paths, older and dead? The testament to such things was stiffening into a J-shaped carcass, wrapped in an old woolen blanket and curled around a spare tire amid countless empty quarts of motor oil in the trunk. Hal was also the first dead person I'd ever touched. Yet in that moment I did not fear the body. For the first time in my life, what I feared was leaving Los Angeles. Gone would be the long bleached avenues of warm disquiet, the whispering 7-story palms towering with wise endurance above the mashed commutes of countless human insects stitching paths across each other's sordid lives, nestled below the caustic trademark layer of smog that governs the puppet show, where hope and despair collide in intersections of the same blue smoke the aspirations are made of and then burn to. It was the same color that broke through the tattered blinds of Hal's window and occult shafts as I rolled him up in my mother's old wool blanket. The same light that followed me out to the car as I heaved the burden an hour before leaving. The blanket is embroidered with a giant wolf's head and 3 geese chasing the sun. It was given to me years ago, in a time long before I had lost the finger and other things, and the jolting image of the beast's barren jowls wrapped around the ass of my main man, my patriot, as he lay face down, legs bent backward as kneeling in prayer in execution before I slammed the lid against his calcifying backside was all too much. I bore down on the gas, ignoring the unsure rattling of the engine and the sporadic nervous flashes from the beams of other travelers slicing breakneck through the fog, openly apologizing to Hal every time I heard his body bounce up with a dull thud against the trunk if I failed to miss the jarring potholes or scanty asphalt fillers lining the 4 lanes of road like open wounds and petrified scabs. I gargled down more whiskey with the spirit of piss and blood, bitter but necessary, the smell of bile creeping up. 10 more minutes into the fog and she was gone, the lights in the distance obscured by the mist, the mirror filled with nothing but wafts of gray and black, and I still didn't know where I was going. I rolled the window fully down and wet my skin with the vapor, my brain wetting into a razor fever by way of the drink, the ocean's breath on my face, a shitty old compact Hondo, divided by the dueling mortality of its cargo, blasting into the unknown on a stretch of LA highway I'd gone down 100 times before. I reached into my pocket and thumbed Hal's unfinished death letter. Though not a suicide, it was a death letter just the same. I reasoned that if I didn't think of something soon before the 10 West bottomed out at the feet of the Herculean Pacific, I'd simply drive straight into it and bury us both. Thank you.
New York was supposed to be a darker place than Los Angeles. We're sort of ruining our credibility here. This is my house. Next up is an author very dear to my heart, Arthur Nersesian, who is the very first author who Akashic and I ever published. Although at that stage, to call it publishing might have been inflating what was actually going on. We had no idea what we were doing, truly. But fortunately, we started off with a great book, a novel with a funny title, which is nonetheless an excellent novel called The Fuck Up. That was the very first book that we published, and after we published it and it got tons of media attention and sold really well, which is pretty much the only way to start a small publishing venture, is to start off well and catch people's attention. But after we had done several printings of it, Simon & Schuster stepped in and they were like, we want that book. And so they took it, and they've sold over 100,000 copies of it, which is pretty exciting. And that was in 1997, and so now we're in 2010, and Akashic is just about to publish Arthur's latest novel called Mesopotamia, which I think he will be reading from this evening. And he is also a playwright and a poet, although he has published more works of fiction than any other form. All of his books are really wonderful. We've published some of them. Some of them have been published by companies like Simon & Schuster and HarperCollins. But he has always been very faithful to us, and he's also been a very good friend. So come on up, Arthur.